Let's talk in British English. Leo often felt lost in the vast ocean of English words. Textbooks felt dry, and grammar rules seemed to tangle his brain into knots. He yearned for a way to truly connect with the language, to make it feel less like a chore and more like a vibrant, living thing. He knew learning was important, but the path forward felt incredibly unclear and daunting. One dreary afternoon, his tutor suggested something new. "Why not dive into British English?" she proposed, her eyes twinkling. "It has a certain charm, a unique rhythm. Forget the rules for a moment, just listen, just read. Immerse yourself in the proper British way of speaking and thinking." Leo, intrigued, wandered into a dusty old bookshop. He bypassed the language learning section, drawn instead to classic literature. His fingers brushed against a worn copy of a Sherlock Holmes story. The cover looked inviting, promising mystery and adventure within its pages. He decided this would be his starting point, a new journey. He started reading. Slowly at first, deciphering unfamiliar idioms and sophisticated vocabulary. He wasn't just learning words, he was entering a world. The witty banter, the precise descriptions, the subtle nuances of British culture began to unfold before his very eyes. This was learning English through stories, a revelation. He quickly realized why reading is important. Every page turned was a step forward, expanding his passive vocabulary without him even noticing. He encountered grammar structures naturally, seeing them in context rather than as isolated rules. The narrative pulled him along, making the learning process enjoyable and effortless, a true delight. This immersion made the best way to learn English suddenly clear. It wasn't about rote memorization. It was about engagement, about finding joy in the process. Stories provided that joy, making the language come alive. He no longer felt like he was studying, he was exploring, discovering new worlds and new ways of expressing himself. As he devoured more books, Leo became curious about how other people talk in English. He started listening to audiobooks of the same stories he read. This bridged the gap between the written word and the spoken accent, helping him connect sounds with spellings and familiarizing him with pronunciation. It was a crucial step. He began actively working on how to improve your listening skills. He wasn't just listening for words anymore, he paid attention to intonation, stress, and rhythm. He started with podcasts featuring British speakers, then moved on to interviews and documentaries, tuning his ear to the subtle differences in accents and regional variations. This new focus on listen and practice became his mantra. He would listen to a short segment, then pause and try to repeat phrases, mimicking the pronunciation and cadence. It felt awkward at first, but with each attempt, his tongue and mouth began to adapt, becoming more comfortable with the unfamiliar sounds of British English. Slowly but surely, he began to understand how to make confidence in speaking. It wasn't about perfection, it was about trying. The more he listened and mimicked, the more natural the words felt when he finally spoke them himself. He started by speaking to himself, then to an online language exchange partner. He noticed how people speak English in real-life conversations. It wasn't always formal or textbook perfect. There were hesitations, filler words, and natural pauses. He observed how native speakers used body language and facial expressions to convey meaning, understanding that communication is more than just words. He realized why you must listen. Listening wasn't just about comprehension, it was about absorbing the culture, the nuances, the unspoken rules of interaction. It provided the input necessary for accurate output, shaping his own speech patterns and making his English sound more authentic and natural to native speakers. Leo continued his literary adventure, moving from detective stories to historical fiction. Each book was a new language lesson disguised as an exciting journey. He found himself chuckling at witty remarks and sympathizing with characters, truly connecting with the narrative on an emotional level. He began to see patterns in British English idioms. Phrases like "spill the beans" or "pull someone's leg" no longer seemed random. He encountered them repeatedly in different contexts, which solidified their meaning in his mind far more effectively than any dictionary definition ever could have achieved alone. The rhythm of British sentences started to feel natural. He noticed the slight upward inflection in some questions, the precise articulation of certain consonants. This subtle immersion allowed his brain to subconsciously pick up on nuances that direct instruction often failed to convey, making learning almost effortless. His vocabulary grew exponentially. Words he once looked up repeatedly now stayed in his memory, cemented by the memorable stories they were part of. He could recall specific sentences from books, helping him to recall definitions and usage, truly integrating new knowledge into his active repertoire of words. He also discovered the joys of British humor. The dry wit, the sarcasm, the understated jokes, all became clearer as his understanding deepened. This cultural insight was a bonus, making his learning journey not just educational but also genuinely entertaining and thoroughly enjoyable for him. Leo started venturing beyond books. He sought out British television shows, beginning with comedies known for their clever dialogue. The visual context helped him to grasp cultural references and slang, making the learning process even more dynamic and engaging for his expanding mind. He learned to pause and rewind, replaying challenging dialogue segments until he could catch every word. This deliberate practice significantly honed his auditory discrimination skills. It was slow going at first, but the improvement was undeniable, making listening much less of a struggle. He joined an online British English speaking club. It was terrifying at first. His voice trembled, and he stumbled over words. But the friendly atmosphere and encouraging native speakers helped him push past his initial fear, realizing that everyone makes mistakes on their learning path. He learned that confidence in speaking didn't appear overnight. It was built brick by brick, one small conversation at a time. Each successful interaction, no matter how brief, added a layer of self-assurance, showing him that he was capable of effective communication in English. Observing how other people talk in English during these sessions was invaluable. He saw how speakers adapted their language to different situations, how they used gestures, and how they seamlessly transitioned between topics. This real-world exposure was far more insightful than any textbook. He started mimicking the natural flow of conversations he heard. He focused on intonation patterns, trying to sound less robotic and more natural. This listen and practice approach, applied to real-time interactions, made a profound difference in his spoken fluency and overall articulation. He understood that listening was truly the cornerstone. Without ample, varied listening input, his speaking would forever lack naturalness. It was the continuous stream of authentic spoken English that refined his ear and provided the foundation for effective vocal output. Leo's journey was a testament to the power of stories. They had opened a door, not just to a language, but to an entire culture. From the charming slang to the nuanced politeness, he was absorbing it all, becoming more attuned to the subtleties of British communication. He found that the best way to learn English wasn't rigidly following a curriculum but rather allowing curiosity to lead the way. His genuine interest in British stories fueled his motivation, making every step of the learning process an enjoyable adventure, rather than a demanding task. The importance of reading couldn't be overstated. It was the quiet, consistent immersion that built his foundational knowledge. Reading offered a relaxed environment to absorb new words and structures, unlike the pressure of live conversation, allowing for deeper processing and retention. He reflected on how other people talk in English. He noticed the regional accents, from Scottish brogues to Cockney rhyming slang, understanding that English was a broad term. He appreciated the diversity within the language, no longer feeling daunted by the variations. Improving his listening skills became a daily habit. He listened to the news, documentaries, and even casual interviews with British personalities. He trained his ear to pick out key information, even in rapid speech, a skill that had once seemed impossible to acquire. His advice for listen and practice was simple: find content you enjoy. Whether it's podcasts about hobbies or British comedy shows, genuine interest makes the repetitive listening and mimicking process much more engaging and therefore sustainable for long-term improvement. To make confidence in speaking, he suggested finding a supportive community. It could be online language partners or local conversation groups. The key was a safe space to practice without fear of judgment, where mistakes were seen as stepping stones, not failures. He learned that how people speak English often differs significantly from formal textbook examples. Real-life conversations are dynamic, fluid, and often filled with idiomatic expressions and colloquialisms. Embracing this reality was crucial for true fluency. Why you must listen became profoundly clear to Leo. Listening was the key to unlocking the natural rhythm of English. It was the essential bridge between understanding the language theoretically and being able to produce it fluently and authentically in real-world situations. Leo's transformation was remarkable. He now effortlessly switched between reading British novels, listening to lively debates, and engaging in spirited conversations. His journey had moved far beyond just learning a language. He was living it, embracing its rich tapestry. He often told newcomers that learning English through stories was the most enjoyable and effective method. He explained how narratives provide context for new words and grammatical structures, making them stick in memory far better than isolated flashcards ever could. He emphasized why reading is important for building a solid foundation. It exposes you to diverse vocabulary and complex sentence structures in a controlled environment, allowing you to reread and absorb at your own pace without the pressure of live interaction. For him, the best way to learn English involved this continuous cycle of input and output. Read, listen, then try to speak and write. Each activity reinforced the others, creating a powerful synergistic effect that propelled his progress forward consistently and effectively. Understanding how other people talk in English, especially the nuances of different accents and social contexts, was crucial. It taught him adaptability, enabling him to comprehend speakers from various backgrounds and communicate effectively with a wider range of individuals. He stressed that to improve your listening skills, one must be patient and consistent. It's not about understanding every single word immediately, but about grasping the main idea and gradually tuning your ear to faster speech and diverse pronunciations over time. His advice for listen and practice was simple: find content you enjoy. Whether it's podcasts about hobbies or British comedy shows, genuine interest makes the repetitive listening and mimicking process much more engaging and therefore sustainable for long-term improvement. To make confidence in speaking, he suggested finding a supportive community. It could be online language partners or local conversation groups. The key was a safe space to practice without fear of judgment, where mistakes were seen as stepping stones, not failures. He learned that how people speak English often differs significantly from formal textbook examples. Real-life conversations are dynamic, fluid, and often filled with idiomatic expressions and colloquialisms. Embracing this reality was crucial for true fluency. Why you must listen became the core message of his own learning philosophy. Listening is passive yet profoundly active. It's how you internalize pronunciation, rhythm, and the natural flow of conversation, building the subconscious linguistic framework for fluent speech. Leo's British accent, once a distant dream, now felt natural to him. He could articulate sounds and use intonation patterns that mirrored native speakers, a direct result of countless hours spent listening to British English through stories and media. He even started recommending specific British authors to his friends, sharing his passion for the language and its literary heritage. He became an advocate for immersive learning, proving that enjoyment is a powerful catalyst for language acquisition, perhaps the strongest. The beauty of British English, with its sophisticated vocabulary and polite expressions, captivated him completely. He found joy in mastering subtle differences, like queue instead of line, or flat instead of apartment, feeling a deeper connection to the culture. He understood that learning English was an ongoing journey, not a destination. There would always be new words, new expressions, and new accents to discover. But the solid foundation he built through stories and consistent listening made the journey enjoyable. His confidence now radiated. He no longer hesitated to join international discussions or travel to English-speaking countries. He knew he could navigate any conversation, understanding and being understood, a triumph he owed largely to his unique learning path. He encouraged everyone to find their own story. Whether it was British literature, American films, or Australian podcasts, the key was to find content that resonated personally, sparking genuine interest and making the language learning process feel less like work. This personal connection to the language, fostered through captivating narratives, was the secret ingredient. It transformed daunting tasks into engaging adventures, proving that learning British English, or any English, could be a truly enriching experience for anyone. He often shared his journey, emphasizing that mistakes were not failures but opportunities for growth. Every mispronounced word or grammatical error served as feedback, guiding him towards greater accuracy and fluency in his continued linguistic development. The initial struggle now seemed like a distant memory. English, once a formidable barrier, had become a beloved tool for communication and a gateway to new cultures. He truly understood the profound impact of consistent, enjoyable practice. His advice was clear: don't just study, live the language. Immerse yourself in authentic content, especially stories. Let the characters and plots guide your learning, making the acquisition of new vocabulary and grammar effortless and memorable. He became a beacon of inspiration for others struggling with English, demonstrating that patience, persistence, and a passion for stories could unlock linguistic potential. His journey was a living example of effective, joyful language acquisition strategies. He marveled at how reading had quietly built his internal grammar engine. Without explicitly studying rules, he started forming correct sentences intuitively, an unconscious benefit derived from constant exposure to well-structured written English over time. The diversity of accents he encountered through listening expanded his global understanding. He could now appreciate the richness of the English language worldwide, realizing that British English was just one beautiful facet of a multifaceted global phenomenon. Leo's story resonated with many. It showed that learning English didn't have to be a rigid academic pursuit. It could be an exciting adventure, driven by curiosity and fueled by the captivating power of storytelling, accessible to everyone. He regularly encouraged people to step out of their comfort zones and practice speaking, even if imperfectly. "Your voice matters," he would say, "and every word you utter is a step closer to fluency and building genuine communication confidence." His transformation from a hesitant learner to a confident communicator was complete. He proved that combining reading, active listening, and fearless speaking, all anchored by engaging content like stories, was indeed the most effective and enjoyable path. Ultimately, Leo's journey highlighted that language learning is about connection. Connecting with stories, with speakers, and ultimately, with the vibrant culture embedded within the language itself, making the whole experience profoundly rewarding.